In 2012, new Super Mario Bros. U was announced at Nintendo's E3 presentation, and needless to say, my faith in the future direction of the Super Mario series had been shaken. If you were following me at the time, it was not hard to tell that Super Mario 3D World, in and of itself, was an emotional roller coaster for me. I spent the next 5 years hoping, longing, and praying for Mario to venture back into the realm of true 3D platforming as he did during the days of Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. Just when I was starting to lose hope that the game which defined my childhood love of gaming would never see new life in the modern age, a young, ambitious console known as the Nintendo Switch came along and changed everything. In 2017, Super Mario Odyssey was born, and it captivated me in the familiar way that Mario always does. I'd like to think I've changed a lot since that first E3 video. What I've wanted from Mario has changed, yet in some ways has also somehow remained the same. This feels like the end of a journey, because Super Mario Odyssey is everything I've wanted from Mario, and so much more. How do I love this game? Let me count the ways. All the ways you've probably already heard by now from just about everyone else. But still, all the ways that ring just as true for me. Allow me to preface this video by disclaiming that if you loved Super Mario 64, Sunshine, or even Galaxy to even just an extent, then there is most likely something in Odyssey that you'll love. Something that will feel familiar to you. Something that will delight you. That said, I believe there's a reason Breath of the Wild took home the award for Game of the Year for 2017, and Odyssey did not. That's because Zelda broke new ground. It shattered tried and true traditions. It shook the franchise's very foundation. Odyssey doesn't do quite the same things as Breath of the Wild. I will not say that it is revolutionary, but I will say that it brings Mario back to familiar ground, which I've been asking him to do for years. Mario in 3D here and now feels every bit as fun as I remember it, yet it also feels tighter, more responsive, and more liberating. In spite of all that's familiar, the game still manages to find creative ways of surprising me. Odyssey wastes no time with silly title screens or file selection menus. Instead, the game drops players right in the middle of yet another showdown between Mario and Bowser in the skies above Peach's castle. Mario tastes defeat before long because there would be no game here if he won so early. After poking around the Cap Kingdom and stretching his repertoire of acrobatic muscles, Mario sets off with his new shape-shifting companion Cappy on a globe-trotting adventure to rescue Princess Peach and Cappy's sister Tiara from Bowser's clutches before he forces the princess's hand in unholy matrimony. I would be kidding myself if I said that Odyssey's plot was breaking any new ground aside from maybe the wedding motif. As much as I have advocated in the past for Mario to expand upon its lore and its characters, I'm actually glad the story here took the same backseat it always does, because the gameplay itself is just too engrossing that a more in-depth narrative probably would have felt intrusive. I still believe there's a time and place for Mario to have a deeper narrative, but Odyssey wasn't the right match, and it doesn't try to be, and that's 100% okay in my book. Any other greater attempt at a story might otherwise come off as intrusive or bothersome when coupled with the manner in which the progression in this game is executed. Mario Odyssey is an open-world game, which doesn't always lend itself as easily to a complex story as an RPG might, for example. What Odyssey does do in terms of story is sprinkle in little bits of world building every step of the way through written dialogue by Cappy and the denizens of each kingdom. The writing drip feeds exposition about the problems in each kingdom that Mario needs to solve without feeling too forced. I love that every NPC has something to say, and whether it's something goofy or useful, it makes the world around you feel full of so much more personality and life. You don't even have to stop and chat with everyone. Odyssey borrows the trick from Mario Galaxy of having a standalone speech bubble hover above the character's head as Mario walks by, so you don't even have to stop and listen to what they have to say most of the time. This technique keeps the pace of the game chugging right along. It makes the populated areas of each kingdom feel much more naturally integrated. When you enter an area with NPCs, it doesn't feel as though you have to stop and listen to every conversation before moving on. They still take place in the main interactive environment, and they don't pull you away from anything else in the world that you might want to do at that moment. Cappy himself is an absolute treat and one of the best traveling companions Mario has ever had. He isn't just a sentient instruction manual, he's there to help, and he does so by being more than just a cheerleader. The fact that Cappy is standing in for Mario's traditional iconic hat and gives life to the capture mechanic, which is the very glue that holds this game together, is what makes Cappy feel so significant of a character. He's always pulling his own weight. He plays an interactive role in Mario's adventure. The game would not work without Cappy. The capture mechanic would not make sense without him. What makes Cappy superior to someone like Flood is that in addition to his utility, Cappy has a likable personality. He always has something witty or useful to say. He's very upbeat and keeps the mood positive when he and Mario encounter setbacks in their journey. He taunts enemies and praises Mario for doing something significant like landing a critical hit on a boss or performing an impressive jump. From both a gameplay and a narrative perspective, Cappy plays a critical part in what makes the journey of Odyssey so fun. Super Mario Odyssey has an impressive variety of kingdoms you'll visit on your quest to thwart Bowser. From scorching hot deserts to radiant beaches and plenty of unique, original locations in between. This game boasts the most creativity that this previously stagnant franchise has seen in years. There are so many landmarks to climb, perils to cross, people to meet, and things to do everywhere you go. Some of my favorite kingdoms include Bonneton, which just screams Nightmare Before Christmas, Toast Arena, for its sheer size and depth as well as the clever contrast of ice and freezing temperatures in a desert, Bubble Lane, pretty much my favorite tropical beach locale in all of Mario, New Donk City, for its sheer verticality and realistic contrasting art style, Forgotten Isle, which feels like the closest in size and scope to a level from Mario 64 to me for some reason, Bowser's Kingdom, for continuing 3D World's trend of being a complete subversion of what we've come to expect from Bowser's Castle, and the kingdom unlocked in the post-game, which I will refrain from talking about until the spoiler section of this video. Odyssey's kingdoms are incredibly inspired, and most are unlike anything we've ever seen from Mario before. Some do fall into the typical tropes such as the snow level, the desert level, and so on, but sometimes even these tropes do creative things to surprise players. I would have loved to see even more kingdoms though. DLC maybe? It never really feels like you're treading the same ground more than once. The variety and amount that we do have here is enough for a full-fledged, satisfying adventure, but it was all just so good that I felt spoiled and found myself wanting even more. To move from one kingdom to the next, Mario commands a hat-shaped aircraft called the Odyssey. To fuel the ship and travel further and further across the globe in pursuit of Bowser, the portly plumber collects Power Moons, which are this game's version of Power Stars. The more moons you collect, the sooner you'll gain access to the next kingdom. What sets Odyssey apart from something like Mario 64 is that, unlike the latter where you'll have maybe 10 separate objective-oriented collectibles in total to obtain per level, there are dozens upon dozens of moons scattered all across the kingdom as in Odyssey. You'll search high and low and collect as many or as few moons as you want, which gives players a greater sense of control over their progression. The amount of moons in this game is ridiculous. You can casually clear the main game with around only 100 moons, but if you want to go for 100% completion and collect absolutely everything, your moon count will soar high into the triple digits up to the coveted 999. This seemingly bloated collectible count strikes the perfect balance amongst varying playstyles. You can collect as many or as few moons as you wish in order to enjoy yourself with virtually no penalty. There are so many moons to go around that you don't even have to subject yourself to the trial and error of one mission that has you stumped. You can ignore it, find other moons, and meet your quota for progression on your terms. With so many moons to collect, you'd think that finding them would be almost too easy. And you're not wrong. The moons are so heavily yet cleverly dispersed throughout each kingdom that you'll be practically tripping over them at times. It's not uncommon to find half a dozen moons in rapid succession and within close proximity of each other. Unlike 64, Sunshine, or Galaxy, you are no longer kicked out of the level after collecting a single moon. Therefore, the pace of this game is butter smooth as it continues on indefinitely, starting and ending only when the player decides. Not only that, but each kingdom in Odyssey is tastefully decorated with a series of checkpoint flags which you can use to warp around to key points along the map. This warp system is incredibly smart for quickly navigating the environment and preventing player fatigue from backtracking. It's an indication that Mario is willing to adopt certain things that other 3D platformers have done well over the years, instead of just retreading its own dated mechanical roots while donning a shiny new coat of paint. This addictive Easter egg hunt style game design lends itself marvelously well to the pick up and play aspect of the Nintendo Switch itself. Super Mario Odyssey is the perfect game to pick up for 5 minutes on a commute to work, snag a few moons, and put it right back down, feeling proud of the amount of progress you accomplished in such a short time frame. Yet on the other end of the spectrum, Odyssey is just as much of a joy to play at home in marathon sessions. Some of the most fun I've had from Odyssey so far has come from just listening to an hour-long podcast while I casually traverse a kingdom and sweep it for any remaining moons I missed the first time around. On any other console, Super Mario Odyssey's progression system simply would not work as well. further indicating that the beautiful minds at Nintendo are experts at understanding the hardware and crafting games around it. There are story-based objectives that give you a sense of progression and purpose, but you can completely ignore these missions and collect just about every other moon with absolutely no penalty. You have a generous moon quota to meet in order to fuel the Odyssey and travel to the next kingdom, but there's no right or wrong way to get enough to move on. There's just enough variety in missions you'll be taking on in order to collect moons that you can approach each kingdom with a sense of structure without the entire process feeling too random or repetitive. From finding moons buried in the ground, using the Joy-Con's HD rumble, to chasing down rabbits. From thoughtful and imaginative obstacle courses reminiscent of the secret stages in Mario Sunshine, to minigames galore. From gargantuan boss battles, to tongue-in-cheek 2D side-scrollers labored with love. And from challenges centered around specific captures, to brain-twisting scavenger hunts. There's so much to see and do in Mario Odyssey. While you can expect to find a handful of these same mission types within each locale you visit, there's just enough variety tossed into the equation for good measure. Collecting moons in Mario Odyssey is easy yet engaging. It's addictive yet encompassing to all playstyles and skill levels. Anyone can play this game in any way they wish. There's a sense of unbridled freedom that even the previous 3D Mario titles simply cannot match. Of course, all the exploration and abundance of moons in the world would mean nothing if this game didn't control well, and it is my pleasure to confirm that it does just that. Mario feels simply amazing to control. He moves with a sense of realistic weight, blanketed with all the same whimsical acrobatic feats the plumber is known for. The triple jump, the butt stomp, the wall jump, the air dive, the backflip, it's all here. I can jump right into Odyssey with the same muscle memory I first built all the way back in 1996, and it still feels like I never left that time period. It feels like nothing has changed, and yet the game somehow still manages to feel fresh and new all over again, as if the mechanics of controlling Mario in a 3D environment were carefully preserved and finely crafted to work in the modern age. Or rather, maybe this is all just a testament to how timeless Mario's controls really are. Nintendo can change so little about them and they still work perfectly fine all these years later. Sure, there are some new abilities to mess around with. After a butt stomp, Mario can now immediately leap straight into the air to get some extra height. The spin jump returns from Mario Sunshine as well. So this isn't just a port of Mario 64's moveset. He's kept some of his tricks he's picked up over the years. Hell, he can even curl up into a ball and roll around in what I can only hope is an intentional jab at Mario's speedy blue rival. And I may be an outlier here, but I actually did not mind the swimming controls in this game. They're not perfect, but I've experienced worse. I haven't even mentioned the shiny new mechanic on display in Mario Odyssey, capturing. In this game, with the help of Cappy, Mario can toss his hat oddjob style to attack enemies, reflect projectiles, push open doors, pull levers, harass innocent bystanders, expand his mobility options in the air, and of course, as I'm sure you already know, possess enemies to make them do his bidding. Cap throwing just makes sense to be part of Mario's moveset. His hat is so iconic, and the action itself is whimsical enough that it feels just like something Mario would normally make use of in such situations as the ones showcased in Mario Odyssey. It doesn't require wearing a belt like with Flood or hiding a baby Luma under his hat like in Mario Galaxy. This is something I could see Mario continuing to do in the future, and I hope he does. I hope Mario throwing his cap like a boomerang becomes a permanent new ability of his and a natural evolution for his character. I was kind of hoping we would get more than a taunt as an update in the new Smash Bros., but I'll take what I can get. Mario will probably always be donning his signature red cap, so the potential for the capture mechanic to return will always be there. I hope it does return just because of how masterfully it's executed in Odyssey. The process itself of capturing enemies and interacting with the world in other ways is polished and seamless. It doesn't feel like just another gimmick. And while it does feel as though the game was largely built around the capture mechanic, the speedrunning community has demonstrated for us that in many ways, the world of Super Mario Odyssey is still ultimately a playground for Mario and his core jumping abilities first and foremost. But Odyssey isn't just dressed up to look different from previous Mario titles at a glance. The live system, one of the most persistent and recurring gameplay staples of mainline Mario games, has been done away with entirely. Instead of getting kicked to a game over screen after failing an arbitrary amount of times, you simply lose 10 coins. That's it. You're immediately placed right back where you were before. And coins are so plentiful in this game that not having enough at any given moment is something you have to actively pursue. The 10 coin penalty radically changes the way players are punished for mistakes for the better. I've always viewed the live system as an outdated and unnecessary remnant of a time when games were designed to be needlessly difficult in order to compensate for a shorter overall length. Those times have long since passed, and I've always wondered why Nintendo insisted on clinging onto this arbitrary penalty system for so long. Tradition's sake, maybe? Regardless, I welcome this change, and I hope it's here to stay as the new Mario standard. Mario Odyssey isn't a terribly difficult game. Just about any player with a shred of experience under their belt can blow through the vast majority of the game's challenges with ease. And even though the game does have quite a few pockets of difficulty littered throughout, where a bit more dedication, patience, or practice are required, such missions are 100% optional. Anyone can complete the game any way they want without having to burden themselves with certain moons that they just can't seem to get. Yet, most of the truly challenging moons lie in wait at the tail end of the post-game, taunting those who dare to aim for 100% completion. All this being said, I certainly did not love every single moon I collected during my time with the game. The jump rope minigame was particularly infuriating for someone like myself who has no sense of rhythm, and the volleyball minigame was so tedious and boring that I shamelessly used the co-op mode to cheat my way through it. I did complete the jump rope one legitimately though, I swear. I did it before anybody started hacking to get to the top of the leaderboards. On the other hand, even though the very last mission in the post-game, you know which one I'm talking about, practically turned my hair gray with how many times I failed at it, finally overcoming it was so immensely satisfying that the word rewarding doesn't even begin to describe my emotion. Regardless, the discounted price for player error coupled with the overall variety of mission type and difficulty makes Mario Odyssey one of the most accessible yet instantaneously rewarding games I've played in a very long time. Even though gameplay is pretty much the supreme deciding factor of quality when it comes to Mario games, and most games in general for that matter, that doesn't mean we can't stop and appreciate all the other, smaller aspects of the game as well. For instance, the costumes in Mario Odyssey are a joy I never knew I needed in my life, and now I don't want another Mario game without this cosmetic liberty. Keeping in line with the theme of hats, Mario can mix and match dozens of outfits and headpieces. You can wear pieces that match, get creative within reason, blind the world with the most eyesore combinations you can think of, or even be like me and just run around in boxers and a sombrero while taking immense satisfaction in showcasing Mario's prominent pepperonis to the world. These costumes are such a breath of fresh air that this franchise desperately needed. Don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against Mario's red cap and overalls, they're classic and iconic, but you have no idea how much I loved seeing Mario wear something else for a change. The costumes range from niche references to obscure Mario artwork from over the years, to more clever, recognizable ensembles. They're purely cosmetic and have no effect on the gameplay whatsoever, so Mario is just as agile in a wedding gown as he is in a suit and tie. Don't ask me how that works. I think it would have been cool if there were certain little gameplay changes here and there, such as wearing a helmet allowing Mario to breathe underwater or something, but the designer's approach here is probably for the best. You can buy all of these costumes at the shop with in-game currency or by scanning Amiibo in some cases. When I think about how wonderfully Nintendo it is to be able to buy any and every costume in the game with in-game coins you can earn just by playing, I'm reminded of what a glimmer of hope this company can be at times in an industry shadowed by greedy corporate storm clouds. If Mario Odyssey had been developed by almost any other company, say EA for example, I guarantee these shops would be nothing more than mindless, shameless, microtransaction sinkholes. But luckily, we don't have to worry about that. Nintendo, never change. While we're on the subject of currency, the purple coins are brilliant as well. They're an extra thing you collect along the way, and because each kingdom has its own variant that is only good at that kingdom's shop, keeping track of what you're still missing in each kingdom is so easy. That, and the shops price the souvenirs in such a way so that you'll use every last purple coin available in the kingdom, and you'll know you've truly collected them all when you can afford to buy every single souvenir in the shop. I'd also be doing this game a great disservice if I didn't mention how marvelous the presentation is. Odyssey's graphics are colorful and vibrant, with smart lighting and shadow effects and oodles of detail to drool over. The art direction is incredibly inspired. When the game wants to look as abstract and animated as Mario games traditionally do, it wears the look like it never went out of style. Yet the art direction is also somewhat disciplined and reserved. Mario is able to run around a realistic city with normal-sized humans, and although it is comedic, it's never too jarring. It never pulls you out of the experience. I almost can't believe Nintendo managed to pull off such a hyper-realistic setting in a Mario game. At its core, this looks like what you'd expect a 3D Mario game to look like in HD in 2017. The game knows how good it looks. That's probably why it lets you zoom in and take pictures using the intuitive snapshot mode. Music is also a category in which Mario has made a memorable name for himself. While I am a fan of the original compositions in Odyssey with all their diversity and different tones evoked, I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're all as instantly classic as the ones in the soundtrack of something like Mario Galaxy per se. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely some standout tracks here that will leave a lasting impression for years to come, such as Fossil Falls, New Donk City, and Steam Gardens. But music is subjective, and I'm sure not every song will resonate with every single player. But overall, the music in Mario Odyssey is serviceable at worst and downright delightful at best. The breakaway hits here though are obviously the vocal tracks, such as Jump Up Superstar, and another one which I won't go into detail about until I delve into spoilers here in a bit. There's so much care and attention to detail here to love about Mario Odyssey that if I were to go into detail about absolutely everything there is, this video would never end. So you'll just have to settle for a lightning round for the rest of it instead. Mario's amazing facial expressions on the pause menus. A different species of bird sleeps on Mario's nose in every kingdom. Mario shivers when he's underdressed for the cold, and sweats when he's overdressed in the blistering heat, yet none of this affects Mario's health unless he's in freezing cold water. It's purely cosmetic otherwise, so you can torture the poor guy with almost zero consequence. When Mario runs through a cactus, some needles remain stuck in his nose for a little while. When Mario rolls around in the sand, he comes out all dusty. Similarly, when he walks through smoke or fire or touches lava, he's covered in soot. When he loses all of his health, Mario dies like he's in a 2D side-scroller by falling off the screen. Mario doesn't stand on benches and chairs, he sits in them. You even get a moon for consoling a poor guy sitting alone on a bench. You get rewarded for playing with a puppy. The puppy will play fetch with your hat. Mario dances to music, and his speed will change depending on the tempo of the song. When looking through the periscope, Cappy warns the player not to look directly into the sun, thus protecting the innocent children who might be playing this game from doing the same thing in real life. Hopefully. Captured enemies don't just disappear right after you leave them. They stick around for a bit so you can jump out, do something, and jump right back into the capture. Mario's nose has jiggle physics. If you triple jump and don't move immediately after, Mario sticks the landing triumphantly. Mario exercises proper stretching technique when the player is not controlling him. Mario puffs out his cheeks when he's holding his breath underwater. The Odyssey ship has multiple entrances. Jumping on the Odyssey's navigating globe plays a music box version of Jump Up Superstar. Entering the Odyssey restores Mario's health. When you're chilling in the Odyssey, Cappy will observe the souvenirs and memorabilia you've purchased along the way. Mario can butt stomp to enter a pipe faster. The post-game content made me cry with joy. The New Donk City Festival made me cry with joy. Watching the E3 trailer again and realizing this game exceeded my already high expectations for it makes me cry with joy. You can earn moons just for dancing to music. You can repeatedly jump on people's heads and they won't get mad at you, unlike the Piantas in Sunshine. The Shine Sprite shirt and sunglasses are finally a costume in this game. Brawlmaster 08 lives on. You can roll around in the dirt or go swimming in a tuxedo and it will still look pristine and perfect at all times. The Lord of Lightning looks like something ripped straight out of Skyrim. Riding a moped is awesome, and you can drive as recklessly as you want since no one can get hurt. The tank capture is well made and could have been a fun multiplayer minigame. The Amiibo support is well executed, for the most part. You can scan them to unlock certain costumes immediately, less skilled players can get a bit of a cushion with being able to restore health or obtain temporary invincibility, and you can send the Amiibo out to search for a moon you're missing in the kingdom. Uncle Amiibo will sometimes even refer to the Amiibo by name. But what makes the Amiibo use work is the fact that it's completely optional. Again, for the most part, we'll get into why in a bit. Or, if you don't own any Amiibo, you can use the Search Toad or Talkatoo to find moon locations and hints by paying with coins instead. Options are great. As I mentioned before, coins are so plentiful in this game that these services are extremely affordable and essential tools for completing the game 100%. Now, to make this video balanced, as all things should be, I do have a small handful of nitpicks and complaints since I do recognize that Mario Odyssey isn't a perfect game, despite how much I love it. First off, the Brutals are kind of a throwaway villain group. I get why they're here. They're the wedding planners, and once you get to the end of the game, the reason why they're rabbits makes sense. But I just never found any of them interesting. At all. You fight each of them multiple times, and while each Brutal fight is unique from the others, none of them bother changing their strategies at all over the course of the game. Once you defeat each Brutal the first time, you know how to beat them for every future encounter. Nothing changes. They don't have any additional tricks. To that extent, they were never much of a challenge for me. Where were Bowser Jr. and the Koopalings? I mean, come on, Bowser, you don't even invite your own son or maybe adopted children to your own wedding? Tacky. Just plain tacky. Not to mention the fact that it would have been cool to finally fight the Koopalings in 3D. I'm just saying. This would have been an opportunity to use the Koopalings in a new and interesting way after their roles were starting to feel stale and boring. The Brutals weren't bad, it was a good effort, they were just too easy and really forgettable. I did not like the RC Car Moon missions in New Donk City. I'm not a fan of missions that alter your controls in some weird inverted way. I tolerated them, but if I had to do more than 2 missions involving an RC car, I probably would have started rethinking my desire to complete this game 100%. I was also not a fan of the hint art moons, mostly just because I hated that you have to actually view the hint art in order to activate the moon. You can't just memorize the spot where the moon is located and instantly pick it up in future playthroughs. You have to view the art every single time, which just feels really unnecessary to me. I share the opinion with most other people in the fact that I did not like the motion controls and how shoehorned they felt in Odyssey. Some moves are exclusive to motion controls, which just feels wrong to me. Even though they weren't mandatory to use to complete the game, having certain maneuvers you can't universally execute across all supported control schemes just doesn't feel like something Nintendo would normally do. I guess they were really just trying to push the Joy-Cons as the next Wii Remote and win back the casual Mario Galaxy players, but this tactic just feels really dirty to me. Luigi's Balloon World was fun, for about 5 minutes. My enjoyment of the game took a nosedive when I realized asshats were hiding the balloons out of bounds that could only be reached with exploits. Until Nintendo decides to patch this, I just can't bring myself to have much fun with this mode at all. Still waiting for full-on DLC, or an Odyssey 2. Any day now, Nintendo. Back on the subject of Amiibo, I disliked how the only way you could search for purple coins you were still missing was with the Bowser Amiibo. It's an incredibly helpful service, and it should have been accessible in some other way for players who don't own 10 million different Bowser Amiibo like me. Like the motion controls thing, this just doesn't feel like something you'd expect Nintendo to do since they're all about making their games accessible to everyone. Then again, Amiibo has been sort of calling that principle into question ever since its inception. Lastly, while I do feel that Mario's controls are excellent the vast majority of the time, I do also believe that the long jump got nerfed to some extent and now the move is a step down from what it used to be, which sucks. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just doesn't feel like it covers as much distance as it used to, or that Mario doesn't get any sort of speed boost from using it anymore as opposed to running, or something of that nature. Also, the thing will punish you hard if you make contact with any surface remotely taller than you. If I had to pick one major complaint I have with Odyssey as a whole, it would be this. The vast majority of my deaths in this game came from long jumping, smacking headfirst into the edge of the platform in front of me, and falling to my death. Mario flat out does not grab the ledge anymore after a long jump, and that bothers the hell out of me. Even if there's solid ground beneath me, when Mario long jumps into a fence or any solid vertical structure directly in front of him, the cooldown frames of picking himself back up are straight up ridiculous. Alright, I'd say I've met my nitpick quota. Only thing left to do is go over spoilers. If for some reason there are still some secrets in the game that you haven't seen yet and don't want me to spoil it for you, jump to this point in the video now. Otherwise, don't say I didn't warn ya. The fights against Bowser in this game are very well designed. It retains all the spectacle you'd expect from a bout between these two rivals. And even though it recycles the typical Mario boss design of exploit the weakness 3 times to win, the final version of this fight actually manages to mix things up a little bit. The method for defeating Bowser goes as follows. Steal his hat, dodge his fire breath and flame rings, rapid punch him into submission, and jump over his tail swipe before continuing to wail on him. But Bowser essentially learns from his mistakes and tricks you towards the end, as he'll swipe his tail multiple times in a row. It almost feels like he's trying to play mind games with you. While this may seem like such a simple point, I love the effect it has. You think you've got the Mario boss formula down to a science, yet if you relax or get even just a little bit impatient, Bowser will catch you off guard if you're not careful. I know it worked on me the first time I first fought him in the final round. I genuinely love that a Mario boss fight was actually able to surprise me for once. Mario capturing Bowser in the escape sequence of Honeyloon Ridge was flat out awesome. Maybe other people saw it coming, but I sure as hell didn't, and my god was it such a treat. Bowser's weight and the feeling of controlling him is so unbelievably perfect. His movements are so smooth, and they just feel right. I wish I could use Bowser in more areas besides just Honeyloon Ridge and Darker Side of the Moon. I want these assets to be used to make a playable Bowser game someday. Please, Nintendo! The Fire Breath and Claws are awesome powers that would make an amazing beat-em-up style action game. They don't even have to make any changes to the mechanics at all. Nintendo, literally just port Bowser's assets into a standalone game and ship it out the door. I will gladly pay full price to play that. Break Free Lead the Way is probably my favorite track in the game, and is now one of my favorite tracks from the Mario series of all time. I mean, Jump Up Superstar is fantastic too, don't get me wrong, but this? Oh man, this is fantastic. I was not expecting another vocal track, let alone one that suits Mario very nicely and is a wonderful change of pace from what we normally expect. Yes, it sounds like something straight out of Sonic in English. Yes, it sounds like an anime opening in Japanese. Insert joke about the manga being better here. But don't try to spin that as a bad thing when it most certainly is not. On top of all that, I love how the lyrics communicate different perspectives in English and Japanese. I sincerely hope we'll be graced with more vocal tracks in Mario games in the future. It would be a crime to stop here. I mean, you can't do that to me, Nintendo. You just can't. You can't give me a taste of something so wonderful and delicious and just take it away and never bring it back again. Oh, who am I kidding? They're never doing this again. The Mushroom Kingdom unlocking in post-game is the epitome of fan service, and I love absolutely drowning in it. From the blocky Mario 64 skin, to diving into paintings, to rematch against bosses, to the entire back courtyard from Mario 64 being preserved, to draining the moat, to finding Yoshi on the roof of Peach's castle, this is Nintendo rewarding its fans for being dedicated for so long. When I first got that Mario 64 skin, I had to put my controller down and just cry. Just cry for 5 minutes, cry like a baby because I'm so fucking goddamn hopelessly nostalgic for this fucking game. God, I love this fucking series so much. I just wish this hadn't been spoiled earlier in the game by the painting in Luncheon Kingdom. I mean, Nintendo, what were you thinking? Regardless, I could just run around aimlessly for another dozen hours and just never get tired of this. I was ready for new locations, but this familiar one was so masterfully done that I don't know what else I could possibly ask for from 3D Mario games in the future. Darker Side of the Moon is an excellent final exam, as it's an amalgamation of everything you've learned throughout the game. It's challenging, no doubt about that, but it never feels impossible. It just takes practice and patience to master. The lack of checkpoints does make the length of the level feel tedious and draining when you have to start over from the beginning when you make one mistake, but I understand that having checkpoints would probably make the level a bit too easy. Plus, by this point, you can use the music player. I jammed out to Break Free Lead the Way the whole way through, and it gave me so much adrenaline and motivation to just power through it. I'm so proud that I was finally able to overcome this challenge when I could never do so for the perfect run in Galaxy 2. For collecting 999 moons, all you really get is a golden sail for the Odyssey. That's it. Even with that, the tougher final boss fight against Bowser, and a top hat on Peach's castle, I would not blame anyone who feels the completion bonuses are kinda lame and aren't worth the effort. But I loved Odyssey so much that I was going to go for 100% even if there was absolutely nothing waiting for me at the end of the journey. I won't say that Super Mario Odyssey is my favorite game of all time because that title changes so frequently for me that it's not even worth bringing up at all. But if I haven't already convinced you with everything else I've said here, Super Mario Odyssey is one of the best games I've ever played. It celebrates the history of 3D Mario titles and the franchise itself as a whole. It polishes tried and true game mechanics to a dazzling shine, and makes smart enhancements to the Mario formula to make the game feel new and modern in ways beyond just an HD facelift. The game is proud to play the nostalgia card, and does it tastefully, so it doesn't feel like a cheap cash grab. There's just as much, if not more, new stuff to love about this game as there is familiarity. The capture mechanic, music, set pieces, and characters are all so wonderfully fresh and delightful that I expect many of Odyssey's assets and elements will be reused in future Mario games for the rest of the Switch's lifespan and beyond. I want Cappy and Pauline in all the spin-offs. I want to see some of these new characters show up in Mario RPGs. I want tracks like Fossil Falls and Steam Gardens and Break Free to be remixed or reused a dozen times over. It's rare for a video game that I was so incredibly hyped about initially to go on and meet and in some ways even surpass my already sky-high expectations. But Odyssey passed the test with flying colors. While Super Mario 64 will always have a special place in my heart as the first video game I ever played, Super Mario Odyssey feels like a long-awaited and much-needed evolution of what the former pioneered over a decade ago. So did I like Super Mario Odyssey? I sure did. It's the 3D Mario game I've been wanting since I first started complaining about New Super Mario Bros. U on this channel over 6 years ago. It's the end of a journey. And even though I might not be here anymore to tell you all time and time again just how much these games mean to me, I can't wait to see where our beloved plumber will go from here. I'll be watching. The future's looking like one big, bright, open sky of blue. I'm ready to jump up super high, high up in the sky, board the Odyssey, and take off for Mario's next marvelous adventure. As always, thanks for watching. This has been Brawmaster012, signing off.
Shoot for the stars and